All right, guys, welcome to the latest installment of the CPQ series. I'm here with Josh Talley from Grundfos, who's going to talk a little bit about how CPQ has helped his department. So this podcast is a little unique because we've had businesses come on, we had consultants, but this time we're actually having a customer. So this is a really good opportunity for everyone to really see how a customer views CPQ. But before we get started, I just want to give a quick announcement. On May 3rd in Toronto, there is a configuration work group conference going on where we're going to talk everything from configuration to CPQ. And if you're on my LinkedIn, you've probably seen a bunch of clips, bunch of photos of me promoting it. This is me promoting again. Come out there, meet me. I'm going to be doing a presentation, so make sure you show up, and you can throw some tomatoes at me. Do whatever you like. Get me off my game. Heckle me, please. But make sure, if you can, join me in Toronto. And I promise you won't forget it. It'll be epic. But enough about that. We have the man, the myth, the legend, Josh Talley. Josh Talley, if you can, introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do.
Sure. You heard my name, Josh Talley. I am a Grundfos guy, have been for a little over 20 years now. And Edward and I have been working on a CPQ project here for the last couple of years, learning lots along the way. I started out as a tech support guy. My background is mechanical engineering, so I know how that kind of side of the world works. But getting into some of this tech has been an adventure, but it's been really good. I started out doing tech support. I've done product development, like more physical product development. I've done managing the tech support group internally. I've done some usability and user interface design, and I've also gotten to dive in deep in CRM and like customer master data, material master data. So currently my team, we are managing an old CPQ engine that was developed by IntelliQuip, and we're starting to shift away from that engine into the SAP based one. And we're trying to learn the ins and outs of that. And we're learning lots of pros and cons and just going through that journey at the moment.
Thank you, Josh. So if the people don't know, can you tell us a little bit about Grundfos as a company and kind of what products do they sell and what markets do they serve?
Yeah, Grundfos is a company that moves water. The mission is to make sure that people have access to clean water, and that we do so in a sustainable way. And so we make pumps. And the easiest way to think of a pump is a water moving box. You have water coming in, and you need to move it somewhere that water might not move that place by itself. So the pump makes that journey possible. And there's all kinds of different ones, little tiny ones that you can hold in your hand and go in your house, and other ones that are so huge you could crawl through like it was a playground. And there are a lot of different types of applications in there, and a lot of different chemicals and other industries, but Grundfos is mainly in the water space.
All right, thank you. And then you mentioned that your company decided to move away from the IntelliQuip. Can you give a reason why your company felt that IntelliQuip wasn't serving your needs, and why did you guys decide that you needed to do a whole new CPQ install?
Sure. Well, we have a great hydraulic selection engine that we've been using for a couple of decades. We call it Grundfos Product Center. And the nice thing about the IntelliQuip platform is that it also has a pretty good hydraulic engine in it. The problem is the disconnect between those two systems. The Grundfos system with all the master data in SAP never talks to the IntelliQuip system. So anytime there was a pricing update, or if a dimension was wrong and had to get fixed, or a document was updated, all those kinds of things that you expect to be happening in a system, my team had to beg, borrow, and steal from the official system and bring that over to the slightly unofficial system in IntelliQuip. And it got to be a very heavy maintenance task for us, and to the point where it was really no longer sustainable. And we really saw that on a couple of projects that came in the last year, where there were some very complex motors that uh, were very different than what we had used in the past. And when we looked at the scale of the project to integrate those into the IntelliQuip system, oh my gosh, this is going to take at least 6 months. And if anything changes along the way, it's going to derail us another month. In the meantime, in the system that we were using with GPC, everything was already in place. There were all of these processes and procedures that were being followed. The data was there, it was accurate, and this newer CPQ system just leans on all that product data in the hydraulic engine. So it just magically updates as soon as the existing system would update. So all that maintenance suddenly went away. And those kinds of uh, just swift ability for us to have a change in place, and we literally didn't have to change the system, were obviously very valuable.
So, is it safe to say that IntelliQuip just couldn't really support your business needs, or was it more that, hey, we have this internal website that we can leverage their hydraulic engine for, and this new CPQ would be easier to integrate it with?
Yeah, it's funny that IntelliQuip, of course, will say that, oh yeah, of course we can integrate with your system,
Mhm.
but at a cost and in kind of an obscured way, right? Because they have their own software development team and they have all the control over things. So we're really at their mercy to actually supply us with whatever it was that we needed. And if we didn't fit into their timeline, or if another customer took priority, then we were a bit left in the lurch. Whereas with the SAP CPQ system, we had the reins. And if we needed to adjust our own priorities or do a little tweak here or there, then we have the control and we could get it done more quickly. So it was a balance between the timing and the cost for us, and the flexibility that running our own system really provided.
Yeah, and for some of you who are on my profile who follow me, you know that one of my biggest risks when deciding a CPQ is dependency. So, like what Josh alluded to, being dependent on a vendor to really manage and run your business is not a way to set up for success. So that's one of the reasons why they chose SAP CPQ, which really you can do whatever you want with it for the better or for the worse. So it's really up to you. But thank you, Josh. So for your CPQ implementation, could you maybe go over which customer bases are you trying to serve?
Yeah. One of the challenges that we had, and the reason we kind of got on this journey to begin with, was it's kind of the way that Grundfos goes to market. And we have this, we're the manufacturer, right? And if you kind of follow the supply chain in different directions, the way that we have to go to market, especially in a place like the US that's enormous compared to a lot of other places around the world where they just have to focus on one little country, like Denmark, for example,
Yeah.
which is where we're based. The way we go to market is we have a partner network. So we have our in-house sales force, but those salespeople are more like territory managers. So they are responsible for a particular part of the US. And in that part of the US, there are all these different partners that are in this same kind of space. And some of them stock our products, some just buy from us directly, but then they go to like a contractor,
Mm.
and so we have our partners selling to contractors, and then those contractors are actually selling to the end user, which could be, a building owner or a municipality, something like that. And so we needed a way for those end users, or at least the engineers that are working directly with those end users, to quickly be able to locate product information, not need to understand all of our product jargon and model numbers and what have you, understand all of our systems and how they work. Like, they don't know what a part number is versus a model number. They don't even know what our models are, right? But we wanted to use some industry standard terms and be able to kind of meet these end customers where they are, instead of forcing them to learn our language, so to speak. And the best way for us to do that was just to start from the ground up and build things the way that they would understand it, using all of our existing systems. So that's where we
Okay.
started.
Yeah. So okay. So I guess if we can take it back a little bit. So take us back to 2 years ago, whenever you are sitting in a room with all these different vendors, right? You're getting the proposals, you're getting the quotes. What sort of deciding factors led you to go with SAP CPQ?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we continued our talks with IntelliQuip, for example, and they were actually acquired a few years ago by a company called Revelize. It's a big, private equity holding company, and Revelize went on a shopping spree and bought a lot of different companies doing similar things in this space. One of those was a company called Configure One. They have their own CPQ. It's a little more modern than the IntelliQuip one. Um, and we started going down the path to work with them. And we got to a point where we realized that we'd basically be redoing all the stuff that we did in IntelliQuip in the Configure One engine. And we might have gotten a few extra bells and whistles and maybe a little bit more flexibility, but the cost started to inflate, right? To the point where it was almost double what we were currently paying for the IntelliQuip engine. We're like, man, we really don't want to spend twice as much and basically get exactly to the same place that we are today. And we had thrown out the idea of SAP CPQ because we have some really smart people at our company that know about it and were telling us, hey, there's a great solution over here, right? And initially there was a concern about the cost to that platform, but then something in our contract changed with SAP that basically rolled that platform into our existing enterprise licensure. So we had access to it. We still had to pay a little bit for the instance and to run it, but it was significantly less expensive than doing all that in an external platform. So not only did the license kind of come along with the package, but because all these different products say SAP on them, there's a lot more integration that was more native. And so we, in the end, decided to go with the SAP solution because it generally offered the same level of flexibility as a lot of these other platforms, but in a much more integrated fashion.
Yeah. So yeah, I was a part of the discussions on the SAP CPQ, and I just also want to add to what Josh said is that yeah, this is a local project, meaning local in the U.S., but also the big positive of SAP CPQ is that it could be used globally. So Grundfos is a global project, meaning people in England, in Denmark, in China, they can use the SAP CPQ. So it's not just a U.S. product. Of course, we're using it for one way, but kind of selling the company that hey, we can use this around the world. I think that was an easier sell. So for any of you customers out there who are having a hard time selling to your leadership on SAP CPQ and you have SAP, this might be a path to go to. This might just say, hey, this can help the whole business, right? And then also SAP CPQ is fully integratable with SAP C4C. So if you use SAP C4C or if you use SAP CRM, you're going to need probably SAP CPQ because it just integrates seamlessly. All right. So we talked about the history of CPQ and Grundfos, and then we talked about, okay, we're going to go SAP CPQ. So you have the quote, you have the install. Now, what was the biggest obstacle in really getting it off the ground as far as like the development goes?
Yeah, because we don't have a lot of in-house developers uh, for the platform specifically, we needed a good partner that does have that expertise. So it was kind of a combination of finding a good partner and convincing all the people who write the checks in Grundfos that this is the way to go. So we found a great partner in that was able to help us get it off the ground, have the technical expertise. Uh, they did have to learn our systems a little bit, but they had enough experience from past partnerships that they didn't have a whole lot of extra lifting to do. But that was one of the big challenges was getting all that established and then getting kind of the support and the permission from our leadership to get it off the ground.
Yeah, definitely. So for sure, if you're doing SAP CPQ implementation, you need a partner. So it's important to vet those partners, whether, definitely look at their prior history, their prior success, and also industry. So every industry is different when it comes to SAP CPQ and different requirements. Let's say for pumps, we're going to need a hydraulic engine. Does your consultants know what a hydraulic engine is? Do they know what a pump in is? This is important. So really good point, Josh. So you got your consultants. So we've been implementing for about 2 years now. Uh, what is one thing that you would do different in the implementation?
This is a bit of a rabbit hole, I would say.
Hmm.
Um, the way that we are currently set up is I kind of jokingly refer to it as uh, a lot of kids playing in the same sandbox, right?
Hmm.
And we're all sharing one instance. And there's some good things about that and some challenges, I think. Right now, we're using, you mentioned the C4C earlier. Um, our company we needed a quoting engine that was a little more customized than what C4C offered. That's debatable, but that's what they decided on. And so we're using CPQ as the quoting engine for our CRM implementation. Offers a lot of flexibility, lots of customizability. That part's great. And then what my team is using CPQ for is kind of the configure price quote with all those pieces together, but it's a different um, package of that quotation engine. And so we have our version of the quotation over here, and commercial or our C4C team, they have their version of the quotation over here, and those things are a bit separate. And we're trying to find ways to bring those together eventually. Um, the other part that I think I would do differently um, has to do with the catalog
Hmm.
because right now our product center tool that we've had for decades is serving as the catalog, and CPQ has its own catalog you can use. And if you use that catalog, there's a ton of stuff you can do with it. It makes it really easy to operate CPQ as kind of a headless
Hmm.
interface. And if you have, you can make little sub catalogs for different entities if you need to, and it offers a ton of flexibility there. But if we're not using that catalog, then it makes it harder to operate as a headless entity or to share those catalogs between different parts of the company. And we're starting to see cases where not having that unified catalog and trying to keep these separate usages of the platform are starting to cause some conflicts. So if I had my way, I would probably do that a little differently.
Yeah, for me, right? So, and in the project, I was more involved in the configuration part of it. But for me, if I would change one thing about the implementation, it would be along with you the catalog, but more the pricing. So right now, this this project uses a pricing tool that uses a database table from SAP. So essentially, there is a lag on that database table. It's not really reliable. What I would do is you're in SAP S4, you're in SAP CPQ. Why not just use the data in SAP? Why not add those catalogs to SAP CPQ so there's no lag, always accurate pricing. If it's phased out in SAP, it's phased out in CPQ real time. So that's kind of
Yep.
what, but of course, there is some limitations, At Grundfos, there is 30,000 odd products, standard products. So, where does that come into account as far as, speed and reliability? But that's one of the things that kind of I always raise my hand for. But I guess they had their reasons.
Yep.
But all right, cool. So you had CPQ. So CPQ, SAP CPQ has been live for almost what, 6 months or so?
Yeah, more than that. I think it was really about a year ago that we tried to
Yeah.
get it out into the public. Yeah.
So about a year. So what are some of the biggest sort of compliments that you hear from customers as far as the new CPQ that you have?
Well, the initial target, like I was saying earlier about that specifying engineer group that we wanted to go after, the feedback from our target audience has been very positive.
Mhm.
They, a lot of the people that might not have touched our tools in the past, when they use this and were like, oh, this I get. I don't
Mhm.
have to memorize a bunch of Grundfos specific nomenclature or whatever. Like, oh, I need an inline pump. I need this documentation. Click, click. There we go. So we've, for the most part, we've hit a lot of the right journeys that we are going for. And that's been probably the most positive thing, is to just get that feedback that, our initial gut feeling and approach was successful, and we just need to hone in on that and make all the kind of peripheral information flow a little bit better and just make it more refined.
Right. So, we're in an industry where configuration is really, really pivotal as far as I don't as far as the business goes, right? So there's
Yeah.
not one pump fits all. It's rare when that happens. So how do you see configuration in SAP CPQ? So what is your first impressions on SAP CPQ with configuration?
Sure. We're trying the best we can to use a lot of the kind of the default layouts for everything possible, right? So we wanted to have a pretty clean development pipeline, so we didn't have to worry about a lot of UI customization, things like that. So from a, a pretty factor, it's pretty bare bones, but it's highly functional, and everyone that has seen some of our configuration models, it's pretty straightforward. Drop down here, radio button there, make your selections, add to quote, right? And I've seen a couple of more customized versions of that the flexibility is certainly there. You can make it look however you want, and lots of different layout options, but the engine behind it is pretty consistent. What I've found to be an interesting challenge is all the different types of configuration engines that are out there, right? We we've kind of settled in on some naming conventions just for our own sanity and clarity. We have essentially three different models we work with. There's what we call a unified or dedicated model, and that's something you build directly in CPQ, and you can make it laid out however you want, but all the information is in CPQ, and it is only in CPQ. There's not a lot of integration outside of there, right? And then the second model is what we're calling a variant configuration model, where you have like an LOVC model in S4, and you have all your rules and constraints in place there. You've got all your routing. You can create material numbers and all these variants, and it's kind of locked in. And your product development team can set all that up, and you can only make what the rules say you can make. And that can be very useful in a lot of cases. To get that model into CPQ, it's relatively straightforward. You got to build a little bit of a knowledge base along the side to make sure that they can talk to each other appropriately. But once you're there, they keep talking to each other. And if something changes in the VC model in S4, it can be changed over in CPQ pretty easily. And you have all the same constraints in place, and they really play nicely together. And then the last model is the SSC model, where you've got kind of this wide open space. You can put, fewer restrictions and restraints in the model, and you can do all kinds of things. Tends to make it a little bit more complicated, and maybe not all your routing is in place, and lots of flexibility, but a little bit more of an overwhelming playground there. We can bring those things in as well, but it's not as straightforward. So we're trying to find a good balance between those three different types of configuration engines. And we've kind of settled on the idea, like, if we can just get everything in a good VC model, then that's going to be the most effective way to move forward. And now we need to do all the work in the organization to make sure that everybody knows what a VC model is and how it works and how to build it and how to prepare it for CPQ. But that's kind of the way that I see it and the way I understand it.
Yeah, and you're spot on, Josh. So I think you're coming for my job. You know too much.
No. Please don't make me do that. My brain can only be so full.
Cool. All right, Josh. So this is you worked with me in configuration in CPQ and out of CPQ. So how would you describe how would you best describe the way I work in CPQ if you had to put a word to it?
Sure. I think the most instrumental area where you've helped us is when it comes into some of that modeling, and not only understanding how those different models work, but the abilities that we have in them and the constraints that we have in them. I think, those different explanations that I've given largely came from what I've learned from you, and also seeing you work with these different models. Because I worked with VC models in S4 a long time ago, so I understood that to a point, but then seeing how those things translate into not only the interface of CPQ, but even in the back end and like how we enable different pieces of functionality. I think that's where you've been really helpful to understand, and also seeing where we might think we're ready to go, but you filling in the gaps and saying, no, you need a little bit more information before we can get there. That's been really helpful.
Thank you, Josh. And I promise you people, I did not pay Josh to say that. It's at his own free will. So I got vouch for it. So
I pay Ed. I take him to good steak restaurants. So,
that's right.
This should be going the other direction.
All right. So, you have your first release of your CPQ project. By the way, guys, it's called Grundfos Select. I'll definitely put a link in the chat. So if you guys want to look at it, you probably won't get a login, but you'll see the splash page. So what are some exciting new updates, new releases that you can tell the people to look forward to?
Sure. So we have one of our latest VC models that we're finishing up testing on actually this week, and hoping to get that out into production and actually get some of these partners of ours using. And I'm really excited to get their feedback on it. We've also been able to build in some good documentation engines, because one of the major deliveries that a lot of the engineers need is what we call submittal document. And CPQ has been pretty flexible in building out what documentation we can show, but then just pulling in data from an API and being able to populate that into our own PDF layout. It's made that pretty easy. So we're going to get that out to customers. And I think lastly, we're also working on kind of a newer version of one of the models where we currently have that CPQ only dedicated model, and we're moving towards a VC model. So we've been anticipating this, but we're looking forward to making the shift from that CPQ only model into a VC, so that we can have that more direct sync with S4, and so that's coming soon, and we're really excited to see how that goes.
All right, guys, you heard it here first. Brand new release coming next week. No, I'm kidding. It's probably gonna be a while. So just be on the lookout for that cool stuff here. But yeah, Josh, I want to thank you for your time. It's always great chatting with you. Always great working with you. And if you have any last words for the people, let them know.
I just wanted to say thanks for giving me the time to talk about it a little bit. And I always appreciate all the information that you're sharing, Ed. I think you are really tapped into the industry and the network. And I think your experience has also really helped us out within Grundfos, and hopefully it will continue for a long time going forward. But I think it's really invaluable, and I really look forward to seeing what we can build next together.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to the CPQ series here. As always, if you have questions, DM me, drop them in the chat, comments. And then if you guys want to talk to Josh or maybe take him out to dinner, I'll put his information down as well. But until next time, peeps, see you later.